suspension, knuckles, under stress? Will it break down? Heat exhaustion, AC not working? Hit a pothole lately and need to see a podiatrist? Foot and tire specialist treating flat tires and bad brakes. Visit Lex Brody's. They're like your family doctor for your car. They perform vehicle checkups, alignments, brakes, oil changes, and more. And they specialize in auto preventative health care. Visit LexBrodys.com and save big on installed Michelin tires and mechanical services. Michelin offers safe, fuel-efficient, long-lasting tires that provide exceptional performance and extraordinary value. Lex Brody's is your alternative to the dealership. ASE and state licensed Hawaii's own Lex Brody's Tire, Brake, and Service Company has won the International Better Business Bureau's 2011 Torch Award for excellence in customer service. Please visit LexBrodys.com for Super Saver mechanical and tire coupons.
Thank you very much. Lex Brody's Tire Company.
Hawaii's Business Authority, KGU, Honolulu.
Part of the Wall Street Business Network.
Covering the financial and business news you need to know.
With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters in Washington. Both President Obama and challenger Mitt Romney were in Ohio today battling for votes in the all-important battleground state. President Obama says there's a clear distinction between himself and Mitt Romney.
You can look at what I've done and you can look at what he's done, and you'll have a sense of who's going to be fighting for American workers. And you can look at his plan and you can look at my plan, because he wants to keep open these tax loopholes that encourage jobs overseas.
While Romney says the nation can't afford 4 more years under President Obama.
I know that they're out there chanting at his events, 4 more years. But let me ask you this. Do you want 4 more years with 23 million people struggling to find a job? Do you want 4 more years where half our kids coming out of college can't find a college-level job?
Also at SRNnews.com, there are reports that an agreement may be close in the labor dispute between the NFL and its referees. Miami Dolphins kicker Dan Carpenter says players can't really have a say in this dispute between the NFL and the referees.
I'm not sitting around following what's going on. No, there's nothing I can do about it. We can't change anything. Nothing we say or do can change anything.
The NFL declined to confirm that a deal was imminent. There's been a firestorm of criticism over the substitute officiating at NFL football games. He wasn't the first to sing Moon River, which was composed by Henry Mancini, but Andy Williams made it his own, and he once wrote that he didn't like hearing anyone else sing it. Williams died last night at his home in Branson, Missouri at the age of 84 of bladder cancer. Through his Christmas specials, he became closely associated with the holiday standard, the most wonderful time of the year. And on Wall Street today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropped 44 points to close at 13,414. The Nasdaq lower by 24. The S&P declined 8, and oil declined to $89.98 a barrel. This is SRN News.
Welcome to Walmart. Looks like you're considering the 55-inch LED LG TV.
Yes, my family would love it.
Oh, we brought layaway back so you can pay a little at a time.
You made my day.
Well, thanks.
What's your name?
Mike?
Mike is the best in the world.
You don't
he
have
brought
to...
layaway back for me. He deserves a building named after him.
Miss...
The Mike Institute of Nice People. Yeah.
Layaways back September 16th through December 14th on eligible items. Restrictions apply. Hours may vary by store. See store for details. Save money. Live better. Walmart.
Is the global debt crisis about to crash the markets and gut your savings? Numbers don't lie. There's no job growth, housing looks anemic, and now more talk of another U.S. credit downgrade. Wake up, America. The 2008 crisis wiped out trillions. Don't let it happen to you. Call 888-299-8333 now to receive the free blockbuster end of the dollar video and the Gold IRA Investor Kit from Lear Capital. Get the free video. Take advantage of gold in your retirement accounts now. Call 888-299-8333. That's 888-299-8333.
This week, Acura of Honolulu and Automart USA proudly announce a salute to our military, an exciting event to welcome home our returning service members and thank all of our active duty retired military and their families for their service and sacrifice. Visit our stores and receive the special treatment you deserve, a $500 accessories allowance to dress up your new Acura with finance rates as low as 0.9% APR, or browse our huge inventory of pre-owned cars and get $500 off our lowest website pricing. With your new Acura, you'll get free oil changes for 2 years. And with every car sold to our military, we'll donate $100 to the Wounded Warrior Project to assist the soldiers who need it most. We'll have food trucks, fun, and a chance to win a new iPad 2 or a Neighbor Island Sweetheart getaway to reunite a lucky couple. Military appreciation comes standard at Acura of Honolulu and Automart USA every day, not just 1 month out of the year. So don't wait. Stop by our easy-to-find locations today on Ala Moana Boulevard and get the special benefits you've earned.
Welcome to Think Tech Wednesday on the Think Tech radio series on AM 760 KGU, broadcasting across the islands and raising public awareness in Hawaii. Now here's your host, Jay Fidel.
Well, good afternoon. It's Jay Fidel on Think Tech. We're having a wonderful time here on Think Tech today, Think Tech Wednesday. And today we want to talk about solar. We want to talk about Provision Solar in Hilo. We want to talk to Marco Mangelsdorf in Hilo and get a handle on what's going on there, but also in a larger sense, what's going on in the industry, what's going on in the state. Solar is one of the two successful renewable sources in Hawaii over the past 4 years. It has proven itself, and it has increased by leaps and bounds in private and also commercial and government installations. And so we are having a lot of solar entering into the grid these days, and it's at the one hand it's very influential, and at the other hand it's somewhat controversial. And Marco Mangelsdorf is no stranger to controversy. Marco, say hi to our audience.
Jay, hi there. Great to be with you. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, great to have you. Marco, you've been writing a bunch of stuff. Let me just get a handle first on all the things you've been writing in the past few weeks. I seem to see your stuff everywhere. Give us a list of the things you've been putting out for publication.
A number of months ago, I guess it was back in July, I wrote a piece for my friends at Civil Beat on the photovoltaic scene on the island of Oahu, which I described as a solar feeding frenzy based on the dramatic increase in adoption that has taken place, not just, of course, on Oahu, but across the state in general. And more recently, I had an op-ed piece in the Pacific Business News where I was describing my kind of relative tale of woe in having been nailed by my own federal government for substantial increase in tariffs on a single order of Chinese photovoltaic modules, which I had delivered earlier this year. So those are a couple of the more recent pieces that I've done.
Yeah, tell the people, what's your background? You were with Hawaiian Electric for a while, and you have a PhD in something, and I have a feeling it's around engineering and solar. Am I right?
Well, in fact, no, that's not correct, Jay. I have been involved in renewable energy now for 34 years. I first started back on the mainland in California in 1978. Back then, solar electric was still literally space age in terms of cost and availability. I was involved in the solar thermal or solar water heating business, both in California and then later on in Hawaii. And I moved full-time to Hawaii in 2000 to be a founding team member of what was then called Provision Technologies, and we were a wholly owned subsidiary of Hawaiian Electric Industries, so we were a sister company to Hiko, Helco, and Miko at the time. Provision Technologies under HEI continued for, about 3.5 years until early 2003, when the HEI board decided to go in a different direction, and they decided essentially to shut Provision Technologies down. I was actually offered a job at Hiko, but after some consideration, I decided I was just too attached to a more kind of peaceful lifestyle here on the Big Island, and rather than accept their job offer, I offered to buy the company from them. And after several months of negotiations and lawyers, an old school-time friend of mine, Douglas Bass, who I knew back in California, he agreed to go in essentially a partnership with me, and the two of us were able to buy Provision Technologies from HEI and close the deal in July of 2003. And he and I have been running it independently for the past a little more than 9 years. And several years ago, we decided we just wanted to be more clear in terms of what we do, and that is 100% exclusively solar and not different types of renewable technologies, which is focused exclusively on solar electric, and we changed our name to Provision Solar.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of interestingly, I've also had what I'll call a parallel track these past decades as far as my academic work. At one point, I thought I might get into teaching full-time and live the life of an academic, and I pursued a graduate degree in political science. a PhD in political science from University of California at Davis. And this I finished up at the end of the 1990s, and this was a heck of a bad time to be trying to get into the academy in terms of a full-time tenure-track job. And I had no success in terms of finding a full-time position. So interesting the way life works sometimes. I eventually switched back to my previous track of renewable energy, solar energy, and came to move here in 2000. And now I really feel very blessed, and I have the best of both worlds. I'm involved in a business that I feel very strongly and passionately about and have for a very long time. And I can teach when I want to on a part-time basis at the University of Hawaii Hilo. In fact, last year, after thinking about it for a long time, I decided to develop my own course called The Politics of Energy, because energy is an issue that has so many components, from environmental to economic to geostrategic, on a global basis. And I wanted to challenge myself and put together a curriculum for a college course that I tried to cover the various bases, and had a grand old time, although it was quite a challenge as well, grand old time doing that. So I've kind of got a foot in both worlds, Jay. I've got one, the bigger foot, I should say, is in being a business owner, doing solar energy, solar electric, and then to a smaller degree, I'm an academic, and I really enjoy teaching.
Oh, that's great. And the two are intertwined for sure. I mean, one might say that solar is politics, and these days one might also say that politics is solar. And the course is the intersection of all of that. I got to come and see you teach. Anyway, you spoke of the frenzy, and I'd like you to describe that to our listeners who may or may not have read your piece in Civil Beat. What do you mean by frenzy? What is happening?
Well, I'll give you a really telling statistic, which I was struck by. I'm working on a piece right now looking at net energy metering, and net energy metering briefly has been available here in the state of Hawaii since July 1 of 2001. July 1, 2001. And net energy metering allows homeowners and business owners who have photovoltaic systems connected to their respective utility grid, as long as it meets certain conditions in terms of components and size of the system and so forth, allows that homeowner or that business owner to get full retail credit for whatever power may be fed back into the grid. And to make that more tangible, here in the Big Island, where we have Hawaii Electric Light Company, also known as Telco, the current retail rate for residential power over the past months has been right around 40 cents, plus or minus a couple of pennies. So whoever has the photovoltaic system that's net energy metered has the right by law to get credit for whatever that retail rate happens to be, which in this case right now is around 41 cents a kilowatt hour. So I decided to look at the numbers from the past approximately 11 years, going back to the beginning of net energy metering, as I said, July 1, 2001, to the present. And from the middle of 2001 to the end of 2011, as in the end of last year, if you look at the total number of net energy metered systems across the state, also including similar systems that are under what's known as a Schedule Q contract on the island of Kauai, because the utility there, the Kauai Island Utility Co-op, no longer offers net energy metering, but homeowners can still put in a system that's connected to the grid under a so-called Schedule Q contract, where they're not compensated or credited at the retail rate, but at the so-called avoided cost rate, which is more or less a way of saying the wholesale rate. So if you look at all the net energy metered systems across the state from mid-2001 to 2011, the end of 2011, there were just under 10,000, okay? Keep in mind that number, under 10,000. I've checked with my friends at HECO recently and asked them if they had any recent data for 2012 so far. And from January 1, 2012 to June 30th, 2012, 6 months, first 6 months of the year, there were approximately 4,300 net energy metered systems registered in HECO, HELCO, and MECO territories. So if we see what I expect expect to be a similar number, if not greater number, for the second 6 months of 2012 across the state of Hawaii. We will see approximately the same number of net energy metered systems go in this year as the entire total of the previous 10.5 years.
Well, yeah, but, when we spoke earlier, we spoke about the abuse that was happening out there, where people would put multiple systems on the same property in order to get multiple tax credits on the same property. And one system was somehow mysteriously divided into 3 or 4 or whatever. So does this number, you think, this recent number, include a lot of duplication because of that abusive phenomenon?
No, I don't see them as connected, because the basis for calculating state tax credits is different than the basis for HELCO, HECO, or MECO calling a single facility at a single HELCO, HECO, or MECO service different. In other words, you could have a home that has, by the State Department of Taxation definition, that can have 3, 4, 5, or more systems, independent systems. However, that will only be served, those, quote, independent systems will be only served by one HECO, HELCO, or MECO service. Therefore, it's only counted as one system according to the definition of what constitutes a net energy metered system.
Okay, let's assume that there's only one system. When we come back from this break, Marco, I want to talk about what you take away from that figure that you got for the first 6 months of 2012. Right after this break, we'll get more information about the development of solar in Hawaii from Marco Mangelsdorf. See you soon.
760 KGU.
Part of the Wall Street Business Network.
No problems to the windward side, but over in Kailua, crews are working on a gas leak on Kailua Road fronting Times Supermarket. Traffic's being contraflowed through that area. Going east to Hawaii Kai is fine. Going west, the H1 slows at the Hickam Curve. The Moanalua slows as you head up Red Hill. Inbound traffic from the west slows at the Middle Street Merge. And if you're coming into town from the east side, the slowdown starts at the McCully Overpass.
Can't find a jeweler to repair your broken jewelry or replace missing stones, restring your pearls? Hi, this is Brenda Ritchell of Carats and Carats Fine Jewelry. We make miracles happen with your broken or damaged jewelry. We're a full-service jeweler. We repair gold, silver, and platinum jewelry. We even polish diamonds and gemstones. Bring us your jewelry to repair at our new location in the Ainahaina Shopping Center, Carats and Carats, 735-2301.
Think Tech Radio is also sponsored by Pacific Cap. Pacific Cap, Hawaii's largest locally based venture capital firm, provides early and later stage financing for Hawaii's high-tech, emerging growth and alternative energy companies. With market focus, experience, and perspectives that are global, Pacific Cap's roots and heart are local. Pacific Cap, a local venture capital firm funding Hawaii's global opportunities.
Think Tech Hawaii is a Hawaii nonprofit corporation organized in the year 2000. Its purpose is to raise public awareness about the importance of technology, energy, agriculture, and globalism to the diversification and expansion of our economy. We do this by television shows on community television and on OC16, by newspaper articles, and by our Think Tech radio series on KGU 760 AM. We also do it by panel programs and events, including our monthly luncheon programs with the Hawaii Venture Capital Association. Think Tech, working to raise public awareness in Hawaii. Check us out at thinktechhawaii.com.
You're listening to Think Tech Radio's Technology and Media Wednesday with your host, Jay Fidel of Bendit Fidel Attorneys at Law.
We're back. This is Think Tech. This is Jay Fidel. We're talking with Marco Mangelsdorf of Provision Solar in Hilo by phone today, and we're talking about the status of solar, I guess, and all things related. So, Marco, let's go further and say, what does that number, that 4,000 number of installations between January and June mean to you? What does that tell us about the growth of solar?
Well, it's been beyond explosive. I would not have predicted. I wrote a piece back in December of last year kind of looking at the trajectory, and I wouldn't have thought that we would have seen or will see as many net energy meter systems go in one single year that equaled the cumulative sum of the previous 10.5 years. I mean, to give you some idea of scale, according to figures provided by the Hilo companies and by KIUC on Kauai, the increase in PV doubled from 2009 to 2010. It doubled again from 2010 to 2011, and now it appears that it'll be something more than doubling from 2010 to 2011. So
why is that? I mean, you study this and you study the related politics. I'm not sure if there's a connection on this issue, but I wonder what your perception is about why this is going so quickly.
Multiple reasons, Jay, multiple reasons, and not necessarily in order of priority. One, of course, we have some of the highest electric costs, if not the highest in the nation here, especially on the neighbor islands. Two, the state and federal tax credits take a really big chunk out of that initial sticker shock, where if you are a homeowner and you're able to take advantage of both the state and federal tax credits in a short amount of time, you can get up to 2/3 of the cost of the system essentially paid for, which will bring the payback or the return on investment down to as low as 4, 5, or 6 years, depending on which island you're on. You've got essentially, from a mass adoption perspective, solar electric has, in my view, hit the mainstream here in Hawaii and other parts of the mainland, especially California.
What do you mean by that? That means that people out there, the public, the guys who have enough dollars and cents in both contexts, they are moving now. They're on the road. But what has motivated them? What has brought them into the mainstream?
I think there's a comfort level that has been achieved on the part of many homeowners that they've seen their neighbor do it, or their cousin do it, or their brother do it, or their sister do it, and it's just kind of the snowball effect that, hey, solar electric is something that works. It is not some type of space-age huckster story of pay me your money now and, I'll be gone next week and my phone will be disconnected. Does that happen, by the way? Does that happen? I mean, you're a long-time member of the industry, and I wonder if there are abuses along those lines where you find people are doing door-to-door sales and taking the money and running. Well, the door-to-door sales, yes, they are definitely taking place. There is a company that hit our shores early this year from the mainland, from Utah in particular, called Vivint Solar, which was just recently sold to the Blackstone Group for somewhere around $2 billion.
Oof.
So this particular company pioneered a number of more aggressive, I'll call them, marketing and sales techniques, including doing door-to-door. In terms of taking the money and running, that hasn't happened, to my knowledge, to a great degree. But I did go through the boom and the bust of the solar thermal business, solar water heating business, back in the early to mid-1980s, which may or may not serve as an example for what we may see here regarding the PV industry, where the solar thermal business went boom, and then it essentially collapsed under a change of political leadership in Washington and also a number of the states. And a number of companies who did very well during the boom were not to be found again in the subsequent months and years. And I think, given the fact, and again, I'll share with you, Jay, that while I do not, my company does not pursue projects on Oahu, which, of course, by the very nature of the population distribution in the state, of course, is where most business takes place on this.
Yeah, why don't you come here and do it? I mean, you're fully able to do it. You're licensed to do it. Why don't you do it?
It was kind of an early strategic decision on my part and my business partner's part, where we just decided to essentially focus on the Big Island as our home turf. We were involved, the Provision has been involved on Maui for the past 9 years as well, but we just decided we wanted to do our best to serve a kind of a more selective clientele and not go after, shall I say, the big ring or the big prize
Interesting.
on Oahu.
People think that, that business and life in general is in the slow lane in the neighbor islands, but that really isn't so at all. I mean, here's Marco Mangelsdorf. He's from Hilo, and yet he's a player in the state process, in the whole state industry, and I really appreciate that, and I think the people in your customers must appreciate that. But let me offer you a distinction, and my distinction is this. To try to explain, why the sales have been so robust lately. And it's this. If you care about green energy, about clean energy, about renewables in Hawaii, you can't do much about wind. You don't have that much control over wind unless you want to put it on your own house, and there may be zoning issues and neighbor issues along those lines. And you can't do much about a whole lot of those renewables because they're not in your control. But the one that is in your control is solar. Solar, you can get up off your duff and actually vote with your pocketbook and with the tax credits and get it done and make a significant contribution, to clean energy yourself without a whole lot of fanfare. You can do that. So I think people are getting the idea. And it's also a way that they express their support of the initiative. How do you feel about this?
No, I couldn't agree more. And it so excites me, it still does, even though I've been doing this for as long as I have, that believe it or not, I will have people, homeowners, who say to me that they're so excited to get their next utility bill. And I challenge many people who don't have solar to have any kind of enthusiasm about, gee, I can't wait till my next HECO or HELCO or MECO bill comes. It's usually more of a sense of dread. But you've got folks who are so excited to see those modules on the roof and also excited to see their electric meters spinning backwards, which means that they're providing power back to the grid, which they're receiving that credit for that I spoke about earlier.
So, Marco, the one thing, there's a couple of flies in the ointment on this. One of them is that, you can't have everybody doing solar, can you? For one thing, the argument's been raised that it's unfair to the guys who don't have solar for them to be contributing tax money for the benefit of the guys that do have solar. So some parts of the population of the taxpayer group, make out pretty well with those rich credits, and some have to pay for those credits. So that's one thing. And the other thing is there's a limit, isn't there? This is non-firm power. It's not dispatchable. It only happens when the sun shines and when it's not raining. That means that you can only make a contribution to your power or potentially to the grid when the conditions are right. And so the grid and the utility must have a way to level that out, to smooth out the power curve. So there must be a ceiling somewhere. I know there's been a fair amount of controversy about that ceiling, but I wonder if you could talk about these negative aspects that have been discussed and will be discussed in the legislature going forward.
Well, without getting too technical, that's absolutely right that each utility grid, doesn't matter where it is in the world, is by definition finite, and that's not disputable. I mean, no utility grid is infinite of size or proportion. Therefore, if the grid is finite, then there is, by logic, only a finite amount of energy that can be feeding into that grid from whatever the multiplicity of sources. And based on what you said, which is in utility speak, EV is considered non-firm power, there are various caps that limit the utility's ability or obligation to accept non-firm power into their grids. And
isn't that right? Isn't that the way it should be?
It has to be. It has to be because, like I said, any grid can only handle so much incoming power from whatever the source. The dispute, the debate, which burns fiercely right now, is over just how much any utility, or more specifically the utilities here in the state of Hawaii, can accept from these non-firm power sources. And right now there is a working group called the Reliability Standards Working Group that was designated by the Hawaii Public Utilities Commission. Essentially, it's a group of stakeholders, including the utilities, that is trying to come up with a report to the PUC commissioners, ideally by the end of this year, by December, that will make recommendations to the PUC in terms of what is feasible, what's doable, what's safe as far as maximum levels of non-firm power feeding into the grid. So that is a work in progress, and it'll be very interesting to see what the report says. Now,
it's interesting what the tension is. You know, in the old days, one would have assumed that all the experts were within the utility company. Now you have the utility company has its view, and you have industry with its view, and it's no longer, no longer one side can say and the other side has to listen. Anyway, let's take a quick break here. When we come back, I'd like to talk more about what's going to happen in the legislature, about this issue, and about the abuse issue we talked about earlier, and about the tax credits in general as they affect solar. We'll be right back after this break. That's Marco Mangelsdorf. I'm Jay Fidel. This is Think Tech. Stay right there.
760 KGU.
Part of the Wall Street Business Network.
We've got an accident up on the H3 freeway. It's Kaneohe bound at the Hirano Tunnel. No problems if you're going over on the Pali or the Like. In Kailua, they're working on a gas leak on Kailua Road in front of Times Supermarket. Traffic on Kailua Road in that area is being contraflowed. Traffic's normal going east to Hawaii Kai. Going west, the H1 slows at the west end of the airport viaduct. The Moanalua slows at Moanalua Gardens.
This week, Acura of Honolulu and Automart USA proudly announce a salute to our military, an exciting event to welcome home our returning service members and thank all of our active duty retired military and their families for their service and sacrifice. Visit our stores and receive the special treatment you deserve, a $500 accessories allowance to dress up your new Acura with finance rates as low as 0.9% APR, or browse our huge inventory of pre-owned cars and get $500 off our lowest website pricing. With your new Acura, you'll get free oil change for 2 years. And with every car sold to our military, we'll donate $100 to the Wounded Warrior Project to assist the soldiers who need it most. We'll have food trucks, fun, and a chance to win a new iPad 2 or a neighbor island sweetheart getaway to reunite a lucky couple. Military appreciation comes standard at Acura of Honolulu and Automart USA every day, not just 1 month out of the year. So don't wait. Stop by our easy-to-find locations today on Ala Moana Boulevard and get the special benefits you've earned.
With the Kahiava Wind Farm on Maui and the Kahuku and Kawailoa Wind Farms on Oahu, First Wind is pleased to create clean, local sources of energy powered by Hawaii's trade winds. Understanding our unique environment and host culture, First Wind develops projects that support local communities and provide net benefits to native wildlife, embracing the concept of caring from Mauka to Makai. Hu Kamakani. May the wind blow towards a sustainable future for Hawaii's people. For more information, visit firstwind.com.
You're listening to Think Tech Radio's Technology and Media Wednesday with your host, Jay Fidel of Bendit Fidel Attorneys at Law.
Hi, we're back. This is Jay Fidel. It's Think Tech. It's Wednesdays. It's Solar Wednesdays here on Think Tech. And we have Marco Mangelsdorf joining us from Provision Solar in Hilo, one of my favorite places in the world. So, Marco, we were going to talk about the legislature in this quarter. And I wonder if you've been winding up for any issues, or you have heard any issues, or you are firmly, committed to take a position on any issues that are coming up in the ledge.
Well, I think the issue that affects my business the most, and many of the other PV businesses which have sprouted up or been around for a while, is the issue of the state tax credit that has supported PV over these past years. It also supports other renewable energy sources such as small-scale wind, solar thermal, solar water heating, microhydro, and so forth. But it just so happens that the renewable energy which has been most popular by far has been both solar thermal and of late PV. So it appears to me, I'd say there's a very excellent chance that some type of modification will likely take place during the upcoming legislative session regarding the EV tax credit.
Well, they've been talking about it for a couple of years, and it's been a big discussion, in the front of the ledge and in the back of the ledge for at least 2 years. So this is not a surprise, yeah?
No, it's not a surprise at all, but I believe that it's reached a greater degree of public awareness and a degree of greater concern on the part of a number of legislators who I have spoken to over the past year or so, primarily due to the fact that the amount of money from the state general fund that has gone to cover the tax credits for PV systems has dramatically taken off over the past couple of years. If I remember correctly, the figure for 2011 was somewhere in the $70 million range, whereas the previous year was somewhere in the $30 million range. And according to a piece in the Star Advertiser over the past 10 or so days ago, that estimate for 2012 was somewhere in the stratospheric, more than 150 million plus.
Oh, that's a lot.
Range. So more and more money. The more and more companies, more and more individuals are taking advantage of this tax credit, which in effect is a reduction, can be seen as a reduction of money coming into the state's general fund. Now,
or effectively a tax on the people who don't have solar or who are not going to install solar.
Oh, that's absolutely correct. And there are competing economists out there. Tom Lodat, who has been very supportive in his analysis of the benefit, the value of the state tax credit in terms of employment and being not an impediment or a hit on the economy or the state's budget, but actually being beneficial. And then you've got on the other side, you've got Paul Brubaker, who scoffs at that and has taken a much more grim view in terms of the hit and the effect of the PV tax credits, the cumulative PV tax credits. So,
where are you on this, Marco?
I have mixed feelings, Jay. I do believe firmly that the original intent of the tax credit before things really started to take off in the past several years did not envision, did not foresee, did not promote a homeowner having 2, let alone 4, let alone 6 or more separate systems that each would be, the homeowner would be able to get a maximum $5,000 tax credit. I don't believe that was ever in the intent of the legislation.
I sure agree, and that's the abuse we were talking about earlier.
And because of the, I think, somewhat unfair and poor position that the State Department of Taxation Department was put in to try to essentially take the role of the solar police. What I mean by that is putting Department of Taxation in the position of deciding, okay, what constitutes an individual system, in what cases and what conditions can a homeowner take 2, 4, 6 or more tax credits for a single facility that is being installed on their roof or on their property.
You know, there's talk about just limiting it to one system per tax map key. That may be a little hard to actually write out and enforce, but that's the kind of talk. And the other thing is just to say, look, if you have one structure, you have one system. Period. But I think this is actually, I mentioned to you before, I think this is the kind of thing that could be handled by regulation, that the tax office could write regulation. One of the great failures of Act 221 was that the tax office never wrote clever regulations, sophisticated regulations to deal with the abuse. And the same thing here. I think the tax office could have, should have, might have already written tax regulations that would deal with this, and somehow talk to people like you or other people who are experienced in making multiple systems and find the right way to say it so there is no abuse. I don't think it would be that hard to do. And frankly, do we really need legislation about it?
Well, according to, again, that piece in the Star Advertiser, there was a quote by the reporter that stated that DOTAX is, in fact, looking at making so-called administrative changes to the application of the tax credit. And that's got my attention. It's got pretty much anybody's attention in the industry as to what kind of administrative changes would they make in order to modify the current standing interpretation of what constitutes one system versus X number of systems. So we are all waiting with bated breath to see.
Now, don't you think that would be better than having legislative action on it? I mean, it's like an elephant and a fly. to have the legislature sit and decide how this would work. The tax office should be the one, don't you think?
Well, it's going to come down, in my opinion, to what they come up with administratively, and clearly no tax is within the executive branch of the state government, which means that Governor Neil Abercrombie is kind of at the top of the pyramid there, so he would instruct, I would think, his no tax head there to craft something which is to his approval. And I do not know at this point where things are moving, in what direction, in terms of whatever type of administrative change.
Well, let's talk about the rate of the tax credit in general, which is another issue. 100 and whatever it was, 20, 30, 40, 50 million dollars is really too much. I think it's more than anyone anticipated, and it's more as a percentage of, our total spending than it should be. So it looks like we're going to really have to cut it down. I don't think that it's going to be a repeal of the whole tax credit, because that would be ill-advised. And we still need to have the incentive, because we still need clean energy. We have to motivate people. And the truth is that you want to motivate the public, a tax credit is a great way to do it. And if you stop the tax credit, you undermine your own policy. So there probably should be some kind of reduction. But what kind of talk have you heard? How do you feel about the amount of the reduction as it is to be discussed in the ledge this year?
Well, nobody that I know of in the industry is discussing going cold turkey in terms of completely shutting down the tax credit by sometime next year or the beginning of 2014. But I think on the part of, from speaking for myself and a number of my colleagues, there is the realization that it is high time to have, shall I say, an adult conversation about what can and should be done, given the fact that, in my view, tax credits are not meant to be a handout or a help in perpetuity to either those of us in the industry who have benefited greatly from the tax credit, nor to business owners and homeowners who have also benefited greatly from the tax credit. We have reached a point of mass adoption, so the cost of PV have come down dramatically over the past several years. It is much more affordable, and the fact that over the past couple of years or so, we have a number of companies from the mainland who have come in and allowed homeowners to get a PV system on their home at essentially zero to very little upfront cost through either a leasing program or a power purchase agreement, where that company is owning the system, getting the tax credits, getting the depreciation value, and able to essentially lease it back to the homeowner or have the homeowner pay for the PV power at a rate typically below what the utility is charging them.
But you're right. I mean, this has to be seen on the continuum on the path to whatever goals we have in clean energy, and we just can't keep on pumping PV out there because we don't have a storage system to level out the curve. And, I mean, after a while, it's going to get unreasonable. I mean, it's not going to work from a technical point of view at some point in the future. So I guess my question is, how do you see, ultimately, PV in the portfolio? Is it going to continue this way? What's going to limit it? What's going to put it in a proper perspective? What is the proper perspective for PV as one of the many renewables that we can use?
My view has always been that solar energy, whether it's to heat water or to produce electricity, is one of the most, if not the most, democratic power source available on the planet. Wind is site-specific. Geothermal is even more site-specific. Hydroelectric power is very site-specific. Solar is much more universal in terms of, yes, there's going to be more sun falling between the two, between in and around the equator and the Tropic of Cancer and Tropic of Capricorn, compared to the high northern or high southern latitudes. But solar falls all over the planet at varying rates. So ideally, the more kind of democratic side of me, who believes that everyone who has the ability to be able to have a little power system, a power plant on their roof, heating their water and producing electricity, should be able to do that. But there will come a time, as you mentioned, that the utilities will be constrained in terms of what it can take on. You mentioned storage. Storage is kind of, in my view, somewhat of a holy grail that when, not if, but when, we can develop the technology that is practical, that is cost-effective, where you can have on-site storage to be able to smooth out the ups and downs of clouds passing over during the day, and also be able to store power for, especially here in our state where the peak power demand is typically between 5 to 9 p.m., certainly Monday through Friday, to be able to help the utility during its peak demand period. I mean, that would make a huge difference, and anybody in the industry is certainly keeping a close watch on what's going on in terms of storage.
What's the ideal storage arrangement? I mean, is it in your house, around your house? Is it limited to your particular installation, or should it be in the neighborhood or maybe island-wide? Think about that for a minute, Marco, and we'll come back from this break and discuss it further. That's Marco Mangelsdorf of Provision Solar in Hilo. Calling in from Hilo, I'm Jay Fidel. We'll be right back after this break.
760 KGU.
Part of the Wall Street Business Network.
We've got an accident up on the H3 freeway. It's Kaneohe bound at the Hirano Tunnel. No problems if you're going over on the Pali or the Like. In Kailua, they're working on a gas leak on Kailua Road in front of Times Supermarket. Traffic on Kailua Road in that area is being contraflowed. Traffic's normal going east to Hawaii Kai. Going west, the H1 slows at the west end of the airport viaduct. The Moanalua slows at Moanalua Garden.
Think Tech Radio is also brought to you by InmoB. Since its inception in 2007, InmoB has grown to become the world's largest independent mobile advertising network, serving over 100 billion mobile ads to date. It has built its product in parts of the world where the mobile phone is not just a screen, it's the only screen. After launching in the US and Europe in 2010, InmoB has more than doubled its global network from 7 billion to 60 billion impressions monthly, and has offices on 4 continents, in Bangalore, Johannesburg, and London, in Nairobi, New York, and Paris, in San Francisco, Seoul, Singapore, and Tokyo. InmoB.
You're listening to Think Tech Radio's Technology and Media Wednesday with your host, Jay Fidel of Bendit Fidel Attorneys at Law.
We're back. This is Jay Fidel on Think Tech, talking about solar with Marco Mangelsdorf of Provision Solar in Hilo, calling in to talk about solar from his point of view. Marco, what do you think? Should storage be local? Should it be, in the back of my house? Should it be neighborhood, like in a fenced area, the way transformers are situated now, or should it be island-wide? How do you see that unfolding?
Well, if you've got individual photovoltaic systems on the roofs of someone's home or someone's homes in a particular neighborhood, or you're talking about a business that has a 10 or 15, 20, 100 kilowatt system, it makes, again, not being a specialist in battery storage or exactly how it would all play out, intuitively it makes a lot more sense to me that you would have on-site storage wherever that on-site distributed generation would happen to be.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. If you had on-site storage and you connected it up with your PV system and I guess your solar water system and all that, you would be an independent unit for the most part. You could satisfy your own needs. You could have energy not only while the sun shines, but in the middle of the night. And that would make you more independent that way. It's almost worth the extra money, I think. But right now, it's a lot of extra money. I don't know what it must cost, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 for a battery storage system for a residence, yeah? And that's a lot of bread.
It's not cost effective, and it just doesn't make sense that you would have a battery storage, a battery-based system for the typical household, unless they absolutely positively wanted to have power in case of the utility going down for a limited number of circuits. Otherwise, it's just not practical from a cost standpoint to have a whole house be backed up with battery storage.
Well, the technology's not here yet, and it gets so complicated because you have leapfrogging technologies. Tomorrow, one day away tomorrow at our Think Tech Hawaii Venture Capital Association lunch in the Plaza Club, and I'm inviting everybody to come to that if they like. We're going to be talking about the energy also-rans. We're talking about the ones that are not on the grid, that have not proven themselves for commercial viability just yet. So we have OTEC, which a lot of discussion about OTEC, ocean thermal energy conversion. We have algae, which could be a great card to play, but not yet. We can talk about Ainako Opono and the Big Island especially for agricultural biofuel, seawater air conditioning, which is ostensibly happening here downtown in Honolulu. I'm talking about ocean energy, which Cynthia Thielen, Representative Cynthia Thielen, is a big supporter of, and should be on that panel. So you have all these moving. It's a moving target. Everything is happening all at the same time. So when I ask you, as I did, where does solar fit in the final array? There is no final array. The whole thing is a moving target. And even if we find a final array by 2020 or 2030, it'll change after that. New things will come up. Storage will turn everything on its head. And so it's very hard to say how these things are going to play out. But that doesn't mean I can't ask you how you think they're going to play out. How are they going to play out?
Typically, if you look at, and to generalize here, the preference of utility companies in general, not just here in the state, but also on the mainland, there is a historical bias, which continues to this day, to prefer larger generation sites, fewer numbers of larger generation sites, rather than many, many more smaller generation sites. And let's put that in some perspective. Hawaiian Electric Company there on Oahu has been quite active these past years in signing projects with a company out of the East Coast called First Wind to develop wind farms in the 60 megawatt range, 60 megawatt North Shore there. And it makes, I think, greater sense for them, their perspective, if they can lock in a renewable energy power source. And keep in mind, again, going back to the so-called Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative of 2008, which was signed by Connie Lau, the CEO of HEI, and Linda Lingle and other representatives that were essentially all committing all parties to very aggressively and in a faster clip move towards greater energy independence for the state, which pretty much everybody supports. How do you get there from here? Okay, we're 4 years later.
Did you think we gotten far enough in 4 years? I mean, I'd like to know your view, because I'll tell you my view. Do you think we've gotten where you might have anticipated we would be 4 years, almost 5 years later?
No, that's a tough one, Jay. That's a tough one. I can say for my own island here, the Hawaii Electric Light Company, I think, has done truly a superlative job in bringing more renewables online. And right now, out of the total kilowatt hours consumed here on the Big Island, renewables provide somewhere over 40% of that, and that's the figure almost to die for in terms of a contribution of renewables into.
Yeah, I think the Big Island has been most successful in terms of the amount of renewables as against the total kilowatt hours.
Well, in fact, my friend Warren Lee, who was head of HELCO for a number of years and who I worked with when we were part of HEI, he made a vow a number of years ago, which impressed me then and continues to impress me now. He vowed that HELCO would not bring online any new fossil fuel generating capacity. Bingo, end of sentence. And I thought that was a very bold thing for Warren to say, and his successor, Jay Ignacio, I think, has been going in that same direction. I know he has.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, you're asking, have we gone far enough, fast enough? And I think in some cases, the progress has been quite remarkable. In other areas, there is certainly room for improvement. And one of the biggest, as you and I have talked about over the years, one of the biggest nuts to crack is this whole grid penetration issue. And how much can the grid handle in terms of these diverse renewable power sources? And there's just no definitive, let alone easy answer to that. But how is solar going to fit in? Well, again, I think it's going to be a smaller percentage compared to wind and compared to other means to be able to generate a lot more power at a more centrally located spot. So
yeah, it's interesting. You talk about this, phenomenal increase in the last few years and all that, but the total megawatts in the state of photovoltaic is actually still pretty small. You probably know better, but my guess would be 50 megawatts, as opposed to a statewide base load of somewhere, 1.5, 1.8, something like that. So it's actually, even now, a relatively small percentage. I think people have to take that into account. And this means, actually, that it's the big supply that still rules. And maybe that's the way it has to go in a state like Hawaii. The big supply ultimately keeps us going.
Well, you're absolutely right that on a percentage basis, the amount of PV that's feeding into the grid right now is still, by comparison, very small. But something you touched on earlier during the hour, I think this cannot be minimized, which is that having solar modules for electricity, solar panels for water on your roof is something that most homeowners, an increasing number